Hey everyone, welcome back. In today's video, we're going to be looking at the final protagonist in Ark Extinction Santiago, the creator of the actual Meks themselves. With that being said, let's get into it. I'd wish everyone would just shut up for 5 seconds. I already know this is bad. We all do. So keep your hyperventilating to yourself, alright? Jesus. When we stepped through my gateway and teleported to the surface, we thought we escaped the worst of it. But it turns out this planet is burnt out, post-apocalyptic nightmare. Some people feel like we're back to square one. But objectively, we're not. We've got tech equipment, supplies, some tame animals, and a decent number of human assets. That's plenty of tools at our disposal. All I need is for the people to give me some space and let me think. This is just another code that needs cracking. Think we've found a decent spot to set up shop. That crater up ahead should have everything we need. Malin scouted it out with some of her pets, so that's at least one other person who isn't panicking. Not that I expected her to after she took the suicide out of that suicide mission back on the station. Dee really knew how to pick a winner. While we were travelling, I've been putting together some basic equipment. Nothing too complicated, just some basic gear to help me take a few measurements of our new environment. Gravity, soil, composition, atmosphere, etc. I've got a good idea of what they'll tell me, but it's worth confirming. Some of my readings were outside my estimates, but this is definitely Earth. The same old self-absorbed ball of dirt. I figured as much. According to that biologist, Helena, people from my time are the most advanced humans on those stations. That means they couldn't have been built too far in the future. And the last I knew, the Federation and the URE were still stuck on Earth. It wasn't for the lack of technology, just the usual suspects, politicians. They could barely share one planet, much less space. People like to talk about having AI overlords as a nightmare scenario. But if we were ruled by machines, I might be looking at a flourishing Martian landscape instead of this ravaged one on Earth. Doesn't sound all that bad when you think about it. I mean, look what happened with humans in charge. Construction on Camp Omega is going well. Things usually do when I have a project to focus on. I prefer something more challenging than living quarters, stables, and basic defenses, but this will keep me busy for now. I'm the de facto leader of this outfit these days. I realize that no one else still among the living is qualified. So fine, I'll do the job. I just can't stand being bothered with every little disagreement or emotional breakdown. I've got real work to do, solving real problems. That's why I made the Federation set me up in that mountain villa as part of my contract. My little hideaway with just me and whatever puzzle they needed me to solve. It was perfect. Had a great sound system too, assuming my memories are real anyway. Tried chatting with Helena a little about this Earth situation. Smart girl, probably smarter than anyone else I've met here. But I think she has a hard time telling when I'm messing with her and when I'm just being a jerk. Not her fault. There's a reason why the Federation suits only visited me when they were absolutely had to. Didn't matter how high ranking they were, I'd never mince words with any of them. I knew they would have to take it. They needed me. So yeah, I can be a pain to deal with, unless you're someone like Dee. She may not have been an engineer or a scientist, but she had a PhD in talking shit. Missed that ginger lunatic. Camp Omega is basically up and running, complete with a functioning infrastructure, and we've got resources to spare, lots of them. The surface of the planet is brimming with element. After just a couple of expeditions to the edge of the waste, we've practically filled our storehouses. I'm not sure what we're going to do with it all. I'm not sure how there's so much of it. Element wasn't nearly this common in our time. Granted, all the element that those stations are made of had to come from somewhere. So theoretically, this city could have been built on top of an undiscovered vein. This much of it would turn even the smallest village into a metropolis overnight. But if that was what was happened here, then where's the mine? May need to take a few more readings. I ran the numbers. We're living in a scientific impossibility. Elements simply couldn't expand fast enough to reach this level of density under natural conditions. Even with millennia of uninterrupted growth, that means something accelerated at an alarming rate. Even if this area's readings are an outlier, well, I say something, but there's an obvious answer here. Man. Any tech that runs on element emits a few molecules of it back into the atmosphere, which takes root in the soil. It's kind of like pollination, but the scale's so small and we consume it so fast that it's practically negligible. To spread it at any significant degree, you need a huge spike in element proliferation. a spike you would get from, say, a century of open warfare with element-based weaponry. And the best of that weaponry, that would be mine. Sure, there's a chance it wasn't weapons. The civilian applications for element were spreading daily. After all, I would know. I took a few corporate espionage gigs under the table just to see if I could, if they started cutting enough corners on filtration. No, I have to face these implications here. Not that I was ever a paragon of virtue. I know I was an engineering prepackaged death, but it should have never gone this far. Then again, if I'm just a clone of the original Santiago, am I really responsible? I keep saying me and I, but it's not my fault that I have his memories. Although, if I accept that, what's left of me? Either I'm a horseman of the apocalypse, or I'm nothing at all. Deal with this later, there's work to do. The situation's changed on us yet again. We saw some big monsters in those caves, but those guys we spotted a few hours ago dwarf them all. It's not even close. And the mechanized drones we've been dealing with, all of a sudden our firepower seems pretty underwhelming. I wonder if those behemoths are the result of element mutation. Depending on how you look at it, that would make them my problem in more ways than one. Fine then. If they're a problem, I'll just make a solution, same as always, and I won't do it by dismissing my identity. I'll lean on it. Yeah, I've got just the thing. It's interesting how the worst circumstances are always the catalyst for my best ideas. Giant bipedal battle mechs! When I told everyone that was my big idea, I'm not sure what I got more of, blank stares or nervous laughter. I think the ones that were laughing hoped I would join in. I didn't. Hey, I get it. I know how it sounds. It's just like I said though. If I'm going to accept my identity as Santiago, then I may as well lean into it. If the original me really engineered Armageddon into reality with crazy high-tech weaponry, then I'm going to reverse it with an even crazier high-tech weapon. Some people may call that fighting fire with fire, but I call it fighting a small gun with a much bigger gun. Turns out, no one else had a better plan, so the wheels are in motion. I've already got 2 teams working on the hangars and gathering resources while I hammer out the schematics. Building these mechs is going to be one of the hardest things I've ever done, maybe the hardest. With the Gateway project, I could use the obelisk as a blueprint, but these are all me. Luckily, having an eidetic memory means I can call on everything I've ever studied about robotics, so I'm not starting from scratch. Besides, this is my true love. They say constantly crunching away on a big project will make anyone burn out, but for me, it feels like a drip in a Lazarus pit. I live for the grind. The final mech designs are complete. Based on the skills and experience of our potential pilots, I decide to emphasize the energy sword as its primary weapon and divert a little less power to the precision tech cannon. That's just the base model though. Each mech has a modification slot where equipment can be swapped to suit the pilot's tendencies and mission parameters. There's a reactive shield dome to protect the team and force close quarters combat, an artillery cannon for backline support, and a shoulder-mounted missile launchers for when you just want to say, to hell with this thing in particular. That alone would make them worth the effort, but I haven't even gotten into the best part. I designed these mechs to make the most of our resources, so while alone they are devastating fighting machines, together they're more than the sum of their parts. I mean that literally. We have the resources to make 4 of them, but when they're all in close proximity, they can fuse into an even more powerful mech, a Megamek if you will. I got the idea when I was messing with the teleportation tech we had found on those hunter-killer robots that roam in the city. Instead of physically linking the mechs together like puzzle pieces, I combined them on an atomic level via teleportation. It's my masterpiece, the ultimate fighting machine, with the most efficient element reactor and most powerful energy sword ever constructed. None of those monsters will stand a chance against it, no matter how big. As long as we find some parts that can handle it, that is. The number of assets we have with any piloting experience at all is practically nil, so I focused on making the controls as accessible as possible. I landed on a combination of Neuralink and gyroscopic full-body motion sensors for what I call beta-level piloting. Basically, once they're linked up, the mech will mimic the pilot's movements and an automated system will handle the messy details. But because I can't just help myself, I also added an array of hard-light consoles and a stronger connection to the nervous system for alpha-level piloting. They'll offer refined control over every bit of the mech, but I would take a stud pilot like D to utilize it. I can't possibly build a machine without leaving a way for it to reach its full potential though, even if no one here can unleash it. Mek Pilot Evaluation Candidate 004 Li Meiyin. I admit when I decided to go with simplified controls that mimic the movements of the pilots, I had Meiyin in mind. This isn't about pity or nepotism either. She's objectively the best close quarters fighter we have. And based on our interview, no one is as battle hardened. She answered both tactical and moral dilemmas quickly and decisively. The later's a little scary, but we will need a pilot like that. Someone who won't hesitate when the safety of the group's on the line. The only question is her emotional state. I don't know what stage of grief she's supposed to be in, but when the fighting starts, there's a chance she leaps right back to the anger. She's still, even with her blood running a little hot, she's clearly a top candidate. Mek Pilot Evaluation Candidate 13, Helena Walker. This one caught me off guard. I knew from experience that Helena could handle herself in a crisis and improvise quickly, and she did well enough on the interview. Creative, level-headed, not much killer instinct, but we don't need 4 Mayins. So she was solid, but not spectacular, at least until we hooked her up into the prototype and looked at her synchronizations rating. She had every gauge maxed out. It's as if her nervous system is more advanced than everyone else's, like it can just process information at a higher rate. I wonder, could she open a neural link with even more advanced technology? Maybe that's a question for another time, but for now, I think I've found my second pilot. Mek Pilot Evaluation Candidate 22, Takaya Kazuma. URE lugheads like Kazuma are why I had no problem helping the Terran Federation. Loud, obnoxious, self-righteous, and all above. Naive? He struggled making tough calls in the interview because he didn't think we should have to make sacrifices. It's a cute sentiment, but we're trying to survive here. I've got to walk the talk though. His memories may end just after the academy, but he's one of our few assets left with real military training. Sync scores a solid 2. Loud mouth, URE zealot or not, he might be our best remaining option. My personal bias is irrelevant. Mek Pilot Evaluation Final Candidate Santiago. Outside of testing, I rarely want to use anything I engineer. Part of it is that my ideas are never as exciting to me once they are realized. Like, it got out of my system. But I also just think it ruins the purity of it. Great painters don't hang their own work on the wall, do they? Unfortunately, this time I don't have a choice. I know the Meks better than anyone, and only Helena has a better sync rating. That's probably because I tested the synchronization system on myself. Stupid mistake. Looks like my workload just doubled. Now that construction has reached phase 3, I need to have a lot more face time with our top candidates. The Meks will still be usable by anyone, but if we can get them specifically tuned to their primary pilots, preferences and behaviors, we can maximize their combat efficiency. Plus, they have to get used to actually controlling them. Not really looking forward to this part. I'm the kind of guy who can't help but take the wheel after 30 seconds of watching someone struggle with a computer console. And these are my greatest creations, not an internet browser. Could get painful. Mei Yin's taking the longest to get used to a cockpit. Understandable since there's not even a word for it in ancient Chinese. Luckily, her endurance lets her practice for long intervals, so she'll catch up eventually. Our sessions are also the quietest. You'd think we would have more of a rapport by now, but D was always our mutual connection. So with Mei Yin, it's all business, even if she's struggling or if I start to get impatient. The only time she went off topic was when she invited me to a workout, and since I'm a pilot now, I agreed. My legs regretted it afterward, but our next session went far better. Not friendlier, not chattier, just smoother. It's like we've reached some stage of silent and antisocial understanding. I'm not sure I get it, but I guess I don't mind. Helena's sessions have become an exercise in frustration. Her synchronization never drops in a single grade, and when I explain what she's doing wrong, she understands. But for some reason, she'll just hit a wall when it comes to execution. She's working as hard as anyone, and she's so damned earnest about wanting to help out that I kind of regret being so short with her. I've even tried to hide just how far behind she's falling. Maybe she needs to focus on something external, like a carrot on a stick. She's always talking about how she wants to find the truth behind those stations. And my scanners picked up an unusual signal the other day. I'm no one's idea of a life coach, but I think that may do the trick. That carrot worked pretty well. As soon as I mentioned that signal I detected in the waste, it was like a second reactor start up in Helena's brain. The signal's not even a sure bet, just a vague chance at finding some answers, but she leapt at it. I got caught up in her enthusiasm and ended up saying more than I intended though. I hadn't meant to bring up the clone situation or whether we're responsible for our past lives, but maybe I needed to get it off my chest. Not sure it helped. Anyway, by our next Mek session, Helena was back on track. In hindsight, seems like it was a confidence issue. Like she convinced herself that her sync rating is a fluke. Better tone down the criticism for a bit. If nothing else, my own sessions have been a moment of peace. I still don't want to pilot one of my own masterpieces in combat, but when it's just me and my mech in the hangar, I feel like I can finally relax. It's not just that I've been working long hours. I did that plenty of times on the Gateway project and our tech bomb before then. It's that I'm working long hours and dealing with people at the same time. All the time. The pilot sessions have been getting better, but running everything else on top of that? Santiago, a water pipe broke. Santiago, so-and-so is hogging all the ammo. Constant interruptions. Maybe I'll just hide in the cockpit and nap for a while. No one would know. It should just work. The Mek's power systems fuse perfectly during my teleportation sims, so why does the reactor keep spluttering? The errors I'm getting don't make any sense, but if I ignore them and they turn out to be right, the fusion process could end in a catastrophic reactor meltdown. Unbelievable. Here of all the places is where I screw up. The most critical junction of this entire damned enterprise. I'll never make a mistake like this back home, but maybe that's because the original Santiago was better than I am. If I'm just a crude approximation, then some degradation would know. I'm fixing this, just like I always have. Simulation 157B was another failure. Error 612A4, same as always. Almost no change in reactor coupling. I've had projects fail, but not like this. Not this spectacular error. Just inches from the finish line. Why did it have to be this one? This is the piece de resistance on my lifelong resume. It's the thing that will wipe away my whole ledger clean. It needs to work, or my legacy is this dead hunk of rock orbiting around the sun. 30 more simulations. I can get 30 more simulations in before I need to sleep. If I can just get a different error code, then I can start to isolate the variables involved. Just give me something to go on here. Anything at all. I can't believe those idiots did something so cheesy. I really want to hate them for that. Not sure what simulation I was on when I finally crashed, but I woke up to Helena and Kazuma dragging me off to deal with some emergency? If I wasn't still half asleep, I'd probably have realized they were full of it. But as it was, I didn't catch on until I saw the cake. We can't really tell what day it is, but I guess everyone decided that today was June 26th, my birthday. According to them, that meant I couldn't work. I had to eat that crappy cake and have fun. Kill me. Fine, the cake wasn't that bad, and maybe it was a little fun. Can't ever tell them though, my reputation would be shot. Those idiots. I can't believe that the solution to energy flow problem was so basic. After being held hostage by the birthday committee for a day, I figured it out within a few hours of getting back to work. Turns out all I really needed to do was step back and get a new perspective on it. Everything has been going better since then actually. Pilot training is nearly complete, we've assembled most of the parts and the whole team is working at peak efficiency. Even Kasuma didn't make me want to throttle him for a change. Don't get me wrong, these guys are still a bunch of corny idiots. They're just my corny idiots, that's all. With the Meks entering their final phase of construction, I decided to give our pilot team a little reward and simulate the Megamek fusion procedure. We won't be able to do it for real for another couple of weeks, but the sim is pretty accurate. It went a lot better than I expected, but by our third try, we had it down pat. The only thing that helped us up was a lot of joking about who will control which body part. Mayin patently refused to switch off the sword arm, and Helena was convinced that she would trip us if she took the legs. I know it goes against my principles as an engineer, but after that, I think I'm actually excited to pilot this thing. Purity be damned. It's too soon. They found us too soon. Those big monsters we saw, the ones that prompted this whole Mek project in the first place, there's some of them that are headed towards Camp Omega, and they're bringing a legion of help. Mechanized drones, mutated animals, the works. We're moving as fast as we can, but even working around the clock, we may have to face them down with just one active mech. 2 tops. The others will be close, but we can't skip on the final boot up procedure without endangering the pilot. I know those 3 would be willing to risk that, but I'm not. Why did it have to be now? Another half a day and we would be able to link up. We were that close. 1 mech, that's all we've got, and it's only because I'd been using my own machine for beta testing. There's no way I can take all of them, even with infantry support. But if I launch now and get their attention, I can lead them on a chase until the others are ready to go. It's a shame we don't have the resources to replace my mech, and without its final masterpiece, it will never take shape. I would have liked to see it, but more than that, I would have liked to experience that moment where we all fused together for real, and our bizarre little squad became the most powerful team the world's ever seen. But if it means giving these idiots a chance to survive this, then I'll give it all up, because in the end, those are my idiots. Hey everyone, I just want to say thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you learned a lot about the Ark lore and Extinction and the story that I had to tell. I look forward to the rest of the other maps that we'll be covering, Aberration, Scorched and Island, and looking at their story and what they can tell us about everything Ark related and what it all means and what it could possibly mean for the future. With that being said, thank you so much and I'll see you later.